Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're going to be covering a range of topics to include the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. We're also going to be looking at some other issues going on around the world as well, such as one big issue right here in the United States, in which the Colorado Supreme Court has decided to take the leading Republican opposition figure for president off of the ballot. Now, what's interesting is Hollywood has a new movie coming out. It's going to be released next year. It's called Civil War. Now, in Hollywood style, such as having African females become Viking kings, such as having African females become Viking kings, in Hollywood style, in this new Civil War movie about a second American Civil War, allegedly, somehow, California and Texas will become allies. Now, not sure how that's going to happen, but you can see the derangement of Hollywood. Very interesting. The Republic of California and the Second Republic of Texas. I don't know, maybe it's just completely wrong, and maybe this map could be wrong. Again, new movie, 2024, about a second American Civil War. And I find it ironic that that movie is coming out while we see what is happening in Colorado and quite possibly other states as well. What would happen if Florida were to take Joseph Biden off the ballot? What would happen? Why are the Democrats taking the leading Republican opposition candidate off of the ballot? Well, I've said this repeatedly. I've talked about it. The Democratic Party, just like the DPRK, the Democratic Republic of North Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. They call themselves a democracy, yet they are a unitary one-party state. In reality, it's a communist monarch. Not sure how you do that, but they did it. Now, I could see that happening here in the United States. The disunited states. Absolutely could. As we see the families of leading politicians gaining more power. I mean, what gave Hillary Clinton the right to become a presidential candidate? She had no background. People want Michelle Obama to run for president. No background. It's monarchism. Now back to what is happening in Colorado. Again, there are fingerprints on what is happening in Colorado. I'm going to show you the fingerprints. Soros, absolutely 100% proven. Soros fingerprints are on what is happening in Colorado. He's concerned. He knows that just based on polling, it is not looking good for Joseph Biden. He's going to lose. In a quote-unquote free and fair election here in the United States, Joseph Biden and his criminal family loses. What other fingerprints? There's good old Klaus. Who do you think Klaus? Who do you think? What president? What person do you think Klaus would like to see as president of the United States? You think he wants to see Trump as president? Right. Good old Klaus. You will own nothing and enjoy it. But yeah, again, Klaus and George. Fingerprints all over what is happening right now in Colorado. If you can't beat them, eliminate them. Again, you're watching the creation, the attempted creation of the unitary one-party state in the United States. Look, I get it. The two-party system is by no means perfect. It is not. It is not perfect. But I can tell you what, a one-party system, and that's where the United States is heading for right now, a true unitary one-party state, is going to be a nightmare. And we're heading in that direction. Unless people stand up and say no. We're not going to allow this. Again, as I talked about before, those 4 Colorado Supreme Court justices, in their attempt to eliminate democracy in the state of Colorado, are doing that because they do not fear accountability. If brave men were to stand up and hold those Supreme Court justices to account for their actions, and those Supreme Court justices feared what they have done, they would not have done it. They don't fear the outcome. And they must fear. The government appointed by the people, and in this case, that's not the case with the Colorado Supreme Court. They have to fear the people. And they have to be held accountable. Now, what does that look like? I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that. But I would encourage you to use your imagination. This guy right here has no accountability. Does not fear what will happen to him because of his actions. Klaus, Same issue. He says what he says and does what he does because he does not fear the outcome. He has to fear. And hopefully some brave man or woman at some point will make these individuals fear, be held accountable. So back to the deep state map, back to the ongoing war between Russia, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine. And remember, guys, just to sidetrack again, where we're at in this conflict, right here, back in 2014. Yep, these gentlemen, fingerprints, all over it, all over it. Massive amounts of money infused to Kiev. 2014 and before. These guys right here. All right. The Russians have recently launched a series of Killjoy attacks, hypersonic missile attacks on targets deep inside of Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians are not saying what was hit, whether it was a miss, whether it was a hit. They really don't say anything. Now, we know the Russians are starting to pick up targeting deep inside of Ukraine. The last strike launched by a MiG-31 launching a Killjoy hypersonic missile, the Kinzhal, was back in August. So they're starting to use them again. And we know the Russians have picked up production capacity of these systems along with other weapon systems, obviously, as well. The Ukrainian military is now reportedly calling for an additional 500,000 troops to be inducted into service, either through volunteers or, more likely than not, through mass conscription. Now, we've talked about before, the Ukrainians are having serious problems in terms of staffing its armed forces. We have seen millions of Ukrainians flee Ukraine, many of which now are fighting age males who do not want to be inducted into service. So they're leaving. They're getting the hell out. Now, the Avdiivka pocket continues to tighten. The Russians are also creating another pocket just to the south by southwest of Avdiivka as well. You can see here the Russians are attempting encirclement operations of Ukrainian forces in this area. Active fighting is going on in this locale. Again, south by southwest. If we measure that in terms of Avdiivka, 11 kilometers to the south. The Avdiivka pocket, if we measure it, 5 kilometers, about 6. Let's just round it up and just say 6. 6 kilometers. The distance a mortar could fire. So a mortar either positioned in the north or in the south can hit any target in between. So the Russians have essentially besieged Avdiivka. They do not have to completely encircle Avdiivka. This area does not have to be orange for the Russians to prevent the supply and reinforcement of Avdiivka, because the Russians can hit any target attempting to move from Avdiivka west or west towards Avdiivka. The military units. Again, not much has changed in terms of the reported military units located in the Avdiivka pocket. I think it's safe to say that there are approximately 3 to 4 brigades of the Ukrainian military still operating in this pocket. Obviously, you have the 110th Mechanized Brigade, the 53rd Mechanized Brigade, and then you have elements that have been parceled together from other Ukrainian units into the Avdiivka pocket. Not a good situation. Krinky. We are hearing today that the Krinky pocket of approximately 1 battalion, 1 understrength battalion of Ukrainian troops located in this area. Let's go over to this map here. And you can kind of see the terrain much better on the Rondelli Formation map. Very difficult situation. Again, Ukrainian forces in the small town of Krinky. Most of these buildings have been destroyed. My understanding is the Ukrainian forces are mostly operating in the basements of destroyed houses and buildings. The Lancet drones and other drones the Russians are using have made it very difficult, along with the use of heavy artillery and glide bombs, for Ukrainian forces to operate in this area. Now you can see just to the west of the town of Krinky how difficult it becomes to even make it into Krinky. If we look at this area here, the area allegedly controlled, so the Ukrainians have to cross in riverboats. Small vessels. And they have to land on the opposite bank of the Dnieper River, the eastern bank, or they take these smaller boats and then try to get into Krinky to supply their forces. And again, you just don't have the Dnieper River, you have the tributaries of the Dnieper River as well. This area, incredibly swampy, marshy, frozen, cold, horrible conditions. The Ukrainians have no heavy weapons, just light infantry that are able to call in direct fire missions from artillery and multiple launch rocket systems such as HIMARS. That's how the Ukrainians are staying in the game on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. As far as maneuvering and taking additional territory, it's just not happening. And this operation, the eastern bank of the Dnieper River operation, is going to probably go down in the annals of military history as a complete and utter fiasco. What military objective did the Ukrainians have, other than trying to create some sort of PR narrative that they had launched an offensive operation on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. The only outcome of this operation was the death and wounding of Ukrainian light infantry forces. It served no purpose. None. And the Russians aren't even really biting. They have decided not to deploy large amounts of forces in this area. Again, out of threat of the U.S. HIMARS that are operating in these areas. But the Russians know the Ukrainians can't do anything. Outside of operating in these marshlands, in which the Russians are not even having any proven desire or want to hold this territory, it makes no sense. None. Zero. And you can kind of see the political hand of Kiev directing some of these decision-making processes. Some of the operations in the east, Bakhmut, even at this point, Avdiivka. Again, all the hallmarks of Zelensky and his political appointees trying to direct this conflict, trying to have a hand in the conflict. $500,000 more troops is what the Ukrainian military needs. Are they going to get them? Are they going to have another round of mass mobilization in Ukraine? Difficult to say at this point. But I think at this point, as I've talked about before, this war is just going to drag on. And I think right now, in terms of what we are watching, it plays into the Russians' hands. The Russians are perfectly happy holding the line of contact and then using its air force in large amounts of artillery to degrade and destroy the Ukrainian military. That's what's happening. And at a certain point, the Ukrainian military is going to break. It's just going to break. And when that happens, what happens? We'll see. Have a good day.